A warm welcome to the most beautiful chess problems of all time. Here we have a study by Watawa from the year 1966, and it's white to move, white can win the game. And you might be thinking, that's not all that surprising, we've got 2 extra pawns here, so it should be relatively easy to win. Sign. No, the task is actually quite complex in my opinion, and yes, feel free to pause the video to try and find the solution yourself. You have the chance to pause the video, and yes, we still need to work through a few moves here and analyze the position a bit to figure out what the right approach is. With white here, we've got a bit of a problem. If the black king simply gets to our pawns and captures them, then it's a relatively quick and rather sad draw. In other words, we need to proceed with a lot of finesse here to support our own pawns. Our own king's in a rather poor position here. And yes, the idea could, of course, be, okay, let's try to improve our king. King to h3. A logical move, I think. The only annoying thing is the black king is much, much quicker to get to the white pawns. And here, white really needs to intervene and say, okay, rook to d7, we're blocking off the opposing king. And the annoying thing is, black doesn't really have to prove much here at all. He says to himself, hey, I'm absolutely fine with a draw, and king to f3. And then we just repeat moves here. And if it carries on like this, well, nothing much is really going to happen. So in this position, white needs to do something different, make some progress. And here, king to h4 would be, I think, the logical consequence. But black can simply say here, okay, I'll just keep my king in opposition. And the white king just can't get any further. And if white thinks here, okay, then I have to play king to h7. And now you can't take the opposition anymore, dear black player. Yes, exactly, then the other motif comes into play. Rook to e8, and yes, now the annoying thing. You'd actually dream of the black rook moving away here, because now we could beautifully block it off and support the pawn promotion here. Only the annoying thing was, of course, black only did it after the king had gone to h7. Because now rook to e7 is there, and yes, king and pawn are attacked, the pawn will fall. And with that, the draw is secured for the black player. Back to the starting position, so king to h3 is not the right solution. You might now come up with the idea of saying, okay, rook to e7, we'll just block off the opposing king directly and keep him here in this slightly smaller square. But black thinks, I don't have to prove anything here. King to f2, I'm just holding up the opposing king a bit here. And what do you actually want to do? So if the kings just move back and forth here, it doesn't achieve anything at all. And if white now gets the idea at some point to give this check, well, then the king is free again. And there's no need to get overconfident here. You simply go back and black has the draw more or less secured. So in this position, sort of, by a process of elimination, it's like, okay, king to h3 doesn't achieve anything, blocking off the king doesn't help either. And we want to support our own pawns here. And it would be a real dream if this king were to end up on this square at some point. Then he would have supported it perfectly here. Or something like this here. Being in that area would also be quite a nice thing. And if it doesn't work going round the top, then it simply has to go round the bottom. And you just have to make sure that the king can travel this route here. Black will be thinking, okay, I can see that plan too. And the only move to really prevent that is king to e2. That lures the king away here, and you also keep quite a good path yourself towards the opponent's pawns. And yes, white keeps going, thinking, okay, now I have to block off the black king as well, with rook to d7. And black will now be thinking, okay, now we've really just shifted the problem a bit. I just have to stop the white king from taking roughly this route here. And the only move that does that is king to e1. And after king to g2, king to e2, you might think, okay, because now some progress has been made here. Yes, a small step forward. He's managed to get from the her file to the ger file at least. Whether that actually helps much is another matter for now. That we can simply shift the position upwards here. We don't need too much imagination for that. And in this position, white can now play king to g7. And what actually changes now? Earlier, we had the situation where if the king moves to the 7th rank, then rook to e8 comes. And here we have this motif involving the king and pawn. But in this exact position, white, of course, doesn't play rook to d8 here, but as black, we've now got a new square, and that's king to h6. And with that, we still have a winning position. So how does it actually continue from here? Let's first have a look at what happens if black simply plays a very passive rook to c8 here, and insists that he's actually quite comfortable here. Then comes king to g6, and, well, black doesn't really have many good moves. He can, of course, give a check here. But then comes king to h5. Black goes back again, quite passively. And here, white makes progress, because ultimately we want to go round the outside here. And that's exactly what we can do now. Now we go around the outside here, and we see the white king is there in time to support his own pawns here. And with that, white wins there. This game, but in this position, black doesn't have to be passive at all. Play rook to c8. He can also give a check here actively to start with. The annoying thing is, king to g5 comes, and really, there aren't many good options. Black can't play king to e5 here now, because otherwise this motif comes up, where the rook basically blocks the way back here and secures the pawn promotion. And if black simply gives another check here, well then it becomes relatively trivial. King to f4, and the king can simply continue his journey here and support his own pawns. And if the black king says, okay, king to f6, we take the opposition again here. And the white king simply doesn't get the chance to support his own pawns. Yes, then rook to d8 always comes, and the advance of your own pawn is supported here. In other words, in this position, this idea with rook to e8 and then given this check is a nice thought, but it doesn't achieve anything here. And the more committed defensive move is if black simply plays king to e5 here and just makes it as awkward as possible for the white king to support his own pawns. What happens now? The white king moves to f7. And yes, it's still not really clear how exactly he's planning to support the pawns here. Black can try a nice little trick here with rook to h8, because this works again, but not due to rook to h7. And instead, white plays king to g7 here, and black can once again set up quite solidly with rook to c8. And yes, white has to get a bit creative here. It's still not really clear how this king can support the two pawns now. And if he goes back again with king to f7, well, it's the same game as before. The threat is still there on the board. So white has to prove they can find something other than king to g7, and that's king to g6. But how does it continue now? The rook has to take up a passive position again here to prevent the pawn promotion. And white gets another move. King to g5 has been played. And now black has two options here. He can either say, all right, my king is standing perfectly here. I don't want to move him at all, because we're in a great position here. This opposition holding the king off at the moment. The first option would be rook to g8 check, to drive the king away. The only problem is, in this position, we're just giving the white player two free moves, because the rook always has to go back to c8. And black has no real chance here to stop the king properly. He'll just keep advancing here. And at the latest here it becomes clear, the king will reach his goal and support his own pawns. Yes, but back to this position, and yes, the black rook can't give a good check. And the black king, yes, if he moves away, yes, that won't end much better either. King comes to 4. And yes, the path is pretty clearly laid out. Black king, no matter what he does here, he won't be able to prevent the white king from moving here and supporting his own pawns. And just for peace of mind, let's go through the computer line here once more to see how far this actually goes, right up to the final promotion here. In this position, white can play rook to d8, and that's the best move. Here, it's really just about giving up the rook, but in this position, white has simply won the game. That was today's puzzle. Quite a lot of king manoeuvring this time in the puzzle. If you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like. And I've linked another video for you here. Feel free to click on it, then we'll see each other again in the next episode.